So they actually had a flag out there, and then we have an intelligence unit, and they knew that they were coming to this protest. We knew that they were going to come and try to disrupt the peaceful protests that were planned throughout the day.
Did they give you guys any kind of warning? How did you know that they were planning on coming to disrupt?
They posted things on Facebook and such, calling for action, talking about how, and not just Antifa, but other groups calling that how other police departments burned, and they were able to get results, and so just that type of rhetoric out there. Yeah.
Specifically when it comes to Antifa, do you remember what those social media accounts were that were calling
No,
for this?
I don't have that for me. With me, it's our intelligence unit, so.
Gotcha. One thing that was brought up by my colleague who received from one of your PIOs a picture of that flag. Is this just a flag, or or is there concrete evidence that these were the people who were agitating the situation?
They were with those people. They were with the people that were putting on helmets, welding gloves, masking up with gas masks, face shields, goggles.
And when we say agitating, it just means putting on that equipment?
They were passing out rocks. They were pulling batons and such out of their backpacks. Some of them were armed. We had a gentleman that was one of their medics who was armed with a handgun on his side. I have a photo of that I can give to you at the end of this, as well as a gentleman that was walking with a .223 rifle slung and a ballistic vest. And so we also saw other people that had tasers. And so we had batons, sticks, tasers, guns, rifle, all those types of things that were out in the crowd with the other people that were just trying to have their voices be heard, because that's their right.
Were any of these weapons that you say they had on them, were they used at all?
Yeah, the sticks and batons, we had strikes to our officers, rocks were thrown to our officers. The flag that they were carrying was actually jabbed into officers' chests on the line. There were people with shields that were trying to break through the officers' lines, the skirmish line.
And then a lot of people are asking, because we have heard some of that from APD, where is the proof that that happened? What exactly can we see there?
So in our body-worn camera video, you can, when we're still downloading it, it was, this was peaceful for 7.5 hours. There were people out here, 2,500 people on the Great Lawn, and they were just exercising their First Amendment rights. They marched throughout the city, they marched onto the highway. And so when these people started putting on their helmets, putting on all that, those types of things are captured on body-worn camera footage that you'll see. There's also still photos that I know Denver Post has taken that you can see. I think that was who had that photo right, of a person with a shield, a metal shield, dressed in a helmet and all that was trying to push through the line. It was being pepper sprayed in that photo.
What exact munitions were used on Saturday? My colleague Steve Stager found, and I have a picture of it if you need to see it, but a small beanbag on the grass just outside of the building earlier today. So what kind of munitions were used, and were beanbag rounds part of that?
Yes, sir. So we have a less lethal shotgun, which shoots a beanbag round, which is what he found, as well as a 40mm launcher, and that shoots foam rounds. And those are only shot directed towards those that are picking up rocks or engaging with trying to take the officers' batons, which we had several of that happening on the line.
How much was used?
I don't have that number now. It's something that we can get down the road, but we're not hiding the fact that we did use those. It's on video. We all had our body-worn cameras on, so it's nothing that we're trying to hide there.
Do you know how many officers were using them?
So each team has a grenadier assigned to them, so I'm not sure how many grenadiers were out, but yet again, something I can get you information on.
People, including activists like Elizabeth Epps, who's actually going to be involved in the discussion with Aurora Police tonight, have questioned what makes throwing a water bottle at officers proportional to being targeted with these less lethal munitions.
Okay, so obviously the water bottles aren't the concerning part. It was the rocks that they were picking up and hitting my officers with, and we gave dispersal orders again and again and again. We de-escalated the situation throughout the day. There were two different groups. There was throughout the day there was a group on the stage that had given speeches earlier on, and there was the group that was confronting us at the police precinct here at our bike when we had the fencing up. They took that fencing down 3 times. When we started to move the crowd. We were just moving them off our fence. They were standing on our fence. We were giving orders to step back, to get off the fence, to not come forward. We had undercovers in the crowd that heard the group of agitators saying that they were going to jump the fence and rush the police department. I want to make it really clear that in this headquarters building holds our evidence and property unit. So every crime that we've ever investigated, the evidence is here. We also have a warehouse, but the majority of it is here. So that would have been devastating to allow this building to be taken or burned when thousands upon thousands of cases from the 17th Judicial District as well as the 18th Judicial District reside here. We also had people, innocent people, working in the building at the time. So when the question about water bottles, the water bottles weren't the issue. They also, across the country, we've seen water bottles full of urine. We found stashed urine bottles here when we searched the campus before it all started. We did another sweep for bombs as well as with our bomb dogs, and we found that in a stockpile of rocks. So those agitators dictated our response, and it's appalling to me because for 7.5 hours there was a peaceful protest. People were heard, and they didn't want this to happen. They weren't looking for this to happen, and neither were we.
And you and the department really believed that there was a true threat of the building being burned?
I believe there was a true threat of our officers being injured even beyond where they were, and the fact that out of their own mouths, they were trying to take our building.
What is your comment on the optics of the protest? That is something that a lot of people are commenting on. Officers in riot gear just feet away from people playing violins. Again, my colleague Steve Stager spoke with the city councilman who says they were there Saturday and they were appalled by APD's decision to bring riot officers in and said, quote, "I'll never hear Cannon and D the same again."
Yeah. So Councilmember Marcano is obviously has his right to his opinion, but he didn't have all the information. And so for him to say that is, that's his opinion. But he didn't have the information that was being given. I was keeping council up to speed throughout the night on what was going on. We were tweeting out that things were getting more dangerous. There's some videos out there that show a line of officers walking by the violinist. And so I just want to make it clear, we had an issue here out in front of the agency where people were taking down our fence and inching forward towards the building. At the same time that we had the peaceful violin group that had just started, because we had been dealing with the issue at the police department throughout the day. We de-escalated, we'd pull our officers back, they'd take the fence again, we'd have to rush out as they tried to storm the building, then they'd back up. We'd put the fence back up, we'd give orders. This was an ongoing thing throughout the day with them. And so when the peaceful violinist showed up, this is the time that a person that was armed climbed a 6-foot wall. He had high ground on my officers with a lethal weapon. And so when you see the videos that are out there where the riot police march out, they actually were protecting that group because we knew we had two different factions of people that were out here. They turned their backs to those people. They were not our threat. We turned our backs facing this threat so that we could protect them. I'm sure that people were confused of what was going on. We were making statements telling people that this was, at this point we feel that this had threatens the safety of people that were there, not only the protesters, but the people that were here peacefully as well as the officers. It escalated very, very quickly. And so when you see that riot gear march out, they have to wear that equipment because of what weapons and sticks and batons and pipes that we saw in the crowd.
And so you're saying that happened before riot officers pulled out, because on the point of the officers in riot gear, people who were at the protest, which we also saw similar instances when covering the protests in Denver, they say what really got a lot of people riled up was actually seeing those officers in their riot gear.
Sure.
When they left, protesters tended to disperse on their own, some of them saying they had grown bored and they were tired and they wanted to go. Do you believe that APD had a role to play in the protest escalating the way it did by having officers in riot gear show up?
No, we were completely trying to protect that section of the violinists and the families that were listening to that. That's why the riot officers came there to put like a division. We wanted to separate what was peaceful to what wasn't. And like I said, all day long, there was no issue for 7.5 hours. And then it became to the point where they dictated what was going to happen. So when we were pushing the line just to take our fence back, people started pelting my officers with rocks. And at that point, we had to meet that resistance with what we were getting thrown at us and my officers were being hit with.
Could the officers who were protecting the violinists been out there without their riot gear, though?
You know, I guess we could that would have been endangering them because we knew what was out there. I knew that I had people with batons and sticks and weapons. And throwing rocks. We already knew that the officers were taking rocks. And so that would have just been putting them in a very grave situation.
There was some confusion among protesters because earlier in the day, Aurora Police had issued an announcement that the protest had become an unlawful assembly, and then they said that was actually incorrect, and then walked it back, but then later again declared it as such, and started using that less lethal munition. So the new Senate Bill 217, which was signed by Governor Polis, it clearly states that police officers have to give a clear warning and time for protesters to actually respond to that warning. But it sounds like protesters are pretty confused on if it actually was unlawful or not, and if that was their warning or not.
Right. So when they were trying to cross the fence, when they were touching the fence, when they kicked down the fence, we were telling them that they were subject to arrest. Absolutely, the Senate bill. That's why we tweeted out information. We used the bullhorns. We had speakers so that people could hear, and we checked with those that were far away over on the library side, could you hear? And they would come over the air and say, yes, we can hear your directions clearly. We did everything we could to give people the opportunity to leave. And when things were escalating and they were passing out rocks, and we knew that it was imminent, that we were going to have an issue.
And you believe that there was clear warning to these protesters before they were fired?
Absolutely, sir. We gave so many orders, and we'll have to probably go back and count it so I can give you a number, but it was given many, many, many times. The videos that you see that are out there from citizens, you can hear the loudspeaker, you can hear them giving that information, and tweeting that.
Is that something APD will be doing, is counting how many warnings in their investigation?
When we have time to sit down and go through everything, we will, because we'll do a use of force report on each and every incident that we had out there.
Something that really seemed to fuel tensions even after the protest, even just yesterday on Sunday, is the question of why did APD disable their comments on Twitter when kind of talking about the protest, when talking about that they didn't use tear gas, not allowing people to respond to that. What was the decision behind that?
Right.
And should people not be allowed to respond to their department that polices them?
So we use Twitter mostly for an effective way to communicate life safety issues and issues that are going on. Obviously, it's 150 characters, and so it's not a lot of information that we can get back on that forum. The decision to do that was actually made not due to the protest, but we had a missing endangered child last week, and people were filling up that tweet feed with, other things that were not helpful in allowing us to find this child. And so there's other ways for people to make complaints. It's through our internal affairs. They can comment, they can tag us in a tweet. So it wasn't taking away their ability to say they were upset about something, but that's just not the forum. The Twitter is not the forum.
What is the demographic or the racial makeup of the command staff as well as officers in general here at APD? And what do you have planned to diversify it?
So I don't have the exact numbers in front of me. I believe our officers are at 79% white, I believe. We have about 4% African American and 12% Hispanic, as well as we have about 12% female. So I will tell you, and I'm glad that you brought that up, that we had officers of color on those skirmish lines last night, and they were being called racial slurs. They were telling our officers to kill themselves. This was a very, very hateful situation.
These officers of color will be called racial slurs by protesters?
Yes, sir, and we have video of that I can share with you.
Gotcha. Were they specifically black officers?
They were.
Being called racial slurs by the very protesters protesting?
Yes,
okay.
Exactly.
Gotcha. In 2016, I believe it was 2016, there was a push for more diversity within the department. What's changed since then?
I'm still hopeful that we can get our department to mirror the community in which we serve. Obviously, Aurora celebrates our diversity. We have over 126 languages spoken. Just in the town hall interviews that we did, I had told them then that I'm hoping that our Explorer program, which is from 14 years old to 21 years old, very diverse, immigrant, refugees, people of color, women, I want to be able to ask civil service, and it's an ask, it's not a tell, and work with them in our charter to see if we can get specific numbers in each academy that I can pull from that very diverse group. It's a very difficult time for policing right now, and I think recruiting anyone to want to come and become a law enforcement officer is going to be very difficult across the nation.
When you look at your force, is it diversified enough for you?
Not at all. Not at all. No. I mean, I'm the only female that's ever held the rank of division chief. There's only 2 other women above the rank of sergeant in this organization, and few of color. And so we definitely need to do a better job. And, you know, anybody that would like to give us suggestions or ideas. But like I said, I think with the situation across the nation with law enforcement and the reforms that are happening, which I applaud, I think it's a revolution that needed to happen. I never will sit here and say that things don't need to change, but I think it's going to be difficult to find people that want to do this job.
There were clear steps that seem to have been taken in planning this vigil, days notice to the police department that this was the case. Something the ACLU told my colleague Roy Lizarraga was that with that heads up, that there was a plan that seemed to be distributed, that there were clear barriers blocking off the parking lot, and you, like you said, you had officers there to keep that area safe for those people. So their question was, why would your plan in keeping them safe already include officers with riot gear and outside law enforcement agencies? And why such an aggressive response in your plan before seeing it play out at all?
So just wearing riot gear is not aggressive. That is just our equipment. And so I think we can look to what happened to our neighboring city in Denver. We can see what happened there night after night. I think it was 7 nights straight of destruction once the agitators came in. And those weren't the peaceful protesters. Those were the people that were determined to cause violence, determined to cause disruption to what was an amazing event and well planned by those peaceful protesters. So those agitators are what caused what happened on Saturday. And they stole the right for those people to enjoy that violin concert. They stole the right for them to be heard and to show that Aurora can do it differently. Because these people that we arrested weren't even from Aurora. There was one from Glenwood Springs and the other from Westminster. And they were both white.
Is there anything you learned from this protest or even watching the protests in Denver that you said that didn't work, we'll do it differently?
So when I talked about de-escalation earlier on, there were many times where they'd knock our fence down, we'd have to come defend the police department, they'd run away, we'd bring up the fence back up again. But they continued doing that, and they were saying in the crowd that they were going to storm. They were passing out rocks. That is not peaceful protesting. That is them trying to cause a conflict with the police, and then to actually throw that rock and hit my officers. My officers are human beings. They have wives, husbands, kids, and their safety is just as important. And so I am, you know, the peaceful protests, they did it right. Those agitators, that's what caused what happened on Saturday night.
No officers injured, correct?
Well, I had 4 officers go to the hospital, 3 for severe dehydration, and 1 who had chest pains and actually suffered pulmonary embolisms.
Direct results from being out
there for so long.
So no injuries from people throwing stuff?
Oh, bruises and yes, those types of things. A lot of the officers have bruises and such, and but nothing that required going to the hospital for.
Do you know how many officers were hit?
We are looking at all that. There are many, many body-worn cameras. I gave you statements from officers that were out there. So however many are, those are 2-sided pages, statements from officers that were there and what they were hit with. And then, you know, taking their baton, actually trying to disarm officers. This is a very egregious behavior.
I want to ask you a quick question about these quotes
Sure.
from the officers really quickly, because I can already tell you if we post this in full, people will say they seem made up, they seem like the department just kind of put some quotes together without slapping any names on here, we don't know
Right.
If these are all from one person, if they're
Right.
from multiple people.
Those are all separate officers, and those reports have been written, and those are pulled from their reports. We can prove that. I mean, we can prove that with the reports that are written, and it's different individuals. Also, Arapahoe County, Jeffco, Adams County, and Colorado State Patrol were here to help us, and their officers also wrote reports with similar statements of being hit with rocks, being struck with things.
Not included in this, though.
No, that's just APD.
And so, are there multiple quotes from a single officer, or is every single quote?
Each one of those is a different officer.
Gotcha, just want to clarify
Yeah.
on my end.
So, yeah, and it was, we've had death threats on officers. We have people putting their addresses out on websites, so putting a name to it, I know you want that information, and it'll come out in the reports, obviously, but the officers are just very, very concerned about their safety and the safety of their families.
And just for further clarification, I counted 9 quotes, so that means 9 officers just on this one page.
Just, yeah, and then if you flip it over, there's more. So there's, and that's not it, right? We had Jeffco, Arapahoe also out there. So that's just a sampling of you to kind of get an idea of, from the officer themselves, as well as the body-worn camera footage that we'll give you about what was going on out there.